The invitation. Thank you all for being here. Hello. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Oregon Area Senior Center, its past, its present, and its future. We'll spend very little time on its present because we are all reasonably familiar with that. We're going to take a look back at the past. And you would think that the Oregon Area Senior Center's story would start out as a very local story. We're a small town, we have a nice little senior center, but it's quite the opposite, in fact. The senior center's story starts with a great big national story. Usually we think of things starting small and going big. This is something that started big and went small. I wonder if I should intervene out there. Anyway, I turned the lights down, but you have to stay awake, so keep you on your toes. Got a few questions for you, and I already promised one. What year, your best guess, what year do you think Medicare went into law?
1963.
1965.
1943.
No, 1965.
Claire Reese is the winner in the back of the room. 1965. You were really close. Really close. So yes, 1965 is when Medicare went into effect. And does anybody know, bonus points, who was the recipient of the very first Medicare card? It was a famous person. Of course it was a famous person. They wouldn't just give it to, anybody. The very first card went to former President Harry Truman.
Wow.
So in 1965, President Johnson signed Medicare into law, gave the first card to Harry Truman because Harry Truman had tried decades earlier to get Congress to go forward with Medicare, and Congress chose not to. But the mid-60s were a period of time when we were going through, as a nation, what we call the Great Society Initiative. So that's when Head Start started, and the concepts of urban renewal, and Medicare came along because in the early 60s, 35% of older adults in this country were still living under the poverty line, and one of the major expenses for most of those people were medical expenses. So does anybody know, this is your next test question, does anybody know what year the first Social Security payments went out?
1935.
Good guess, not quite right. 1940. It was in the late 30s that Social Security was created, but they took a while to gather some money before they started giving money out. So in the mid-60s, we have Medicare come along. We also have Congress deciding to pass legislation that's been known as the Older Americans Act. The Older Americans Act was federal funding that came along to try and help older adults by providing money for nutrition programs, transportation programs, social programs, elder abuse prevention, caregiver supports, and they said, yes, we're gonna give this money to the benefit of older adults, and then they had to figure out who were they gonna give it to? Who was gonna provide these services for these older adults? So first they decided, we'll make that the state's problem. All right, so they're like, done. And now the states are like, okay, what are we gonna do with this money? And the states said, counties, we're gonna give this money to the counties. Counties can figure out what to do with this funding. And the counties went, okay, hopefully there'll be some local organizations that are interested in providing services to older adults. Well, of course, this was in the news a lot. There was a whole sense that older adults needed more than they were getting. And right here in little old Oregon, Wisconsin, there were people interested in starting an organization for older adults. And on July 26, 1973, 51 people who wanted to form an organization for older adults in Oregon met at the Methodist, they met at the Village Hall. And the meeting was led by, for those of you who are local people, you're going to hear some very familiar names here. This meeting was led by Fenton Abrams and Erwin Schultz. They came as representatives of the Methodist Men's Club, but 49 other people showed up as well. Some of them representative of local organizations, and some of them just interested citizens. So, let's see if I've got this right. Nope. Try a different button. Maybe I'm not where I can actually pick this up.
We want our money back.
It just means I have to do it the old-fashioned way. Maybe not. Come on, go to the next slide.
It might be on lock.
I'm just gonna say, I'm not sure it's turned on. This is embarrassing. Okay, there it is. Boop.
Are you having fun yet?
Just loads of fun with them.
I'm pushing the little arrow. I'm pushing the little arrow for the next slide.
How's that working out for you?
As I look, apparently not well. So,
Don't get upset, we're fine. So take your time.
did it do something? No, it didn't
It
change.
went down at the bottom.
Yeah. Do you want to grab her? Yeah. It may be, I don't look. Maybe.
Red light on it?
Be a good statement, the battery may be dead in your hand.
Yeah, it could be. There's a little thing here and I'm wondering, oh, she didn't put the key in the side of the thing. They're not talking to each other right now, but I think maybe they will now.
She's coming.
Don't need her.
Don't need her.
Don't need you. We just hadn't put the key from the thing in the side of the computer. So now it's all good. All right. So here we are. So they had a meeting and they decided they were going to form a steering committee. You know, 51 people are too many people to make decisions. So along came this group that was going to figure out what kind of an organization Oregon needed. So this was the steering committee. I don't know. This is just the 70s through and through, isn't it? Everything from the clothes to the curtains to whatever this is on the wall. But that's just the 70s. We have a group of people getting together to create an organization. So we have Flores Paulson, we have Edna Cunai, Kathleen Hayes, Beulah Schultz, Lena Rowe, Joseph Phillips, Fenton Abrams, and Erwin Schultz, some of whom were not in that picture. But they were supposed to do the preliminary work for creating an organization, find out where they could possibly meet, what kind of an organization they wanted, where might there be money to help them. And this group did not let any grass grow under their feet. Boy, they met and they met and they met again. And they met at their homes and they met at the Methodist Church, Fellowship Hall, and they talked to the county and found out, yeah, they could get access to some of those county funds coming from the Older Americans Act. So by August 23rd of 1973, just a few months later, they were holding their first potluck and they found themselves a name. And the name was the Silver Threads Among the Gold. So that is the origin of your organization. They had that first meeting, the first big meeting, official meeting. They had 60 people show up and pay their dues. The program was held at the Methodist Church Fellowship Hall, and the dues were $1.50 for a year. But they were getting some funding from the county at that point, so they had some resources there. For that first meeting, the J-Sets, if you remember, we had the Oregon JCs and we had the Oregon J-Sets. The J-Sets were the hostesses. And the program was provided by Luella Ames. If you remember Mrs. Ames, she presented a slideshow about her recent trip to the British Isles. So The Silver Threads started with that monthly potluck then, and they've been going strong ever since. I will say there was a little bit of a blip during COVID, but there was a little bit of a blip for virtually every organization in the country during COVID. So, at one point, Silver Threads started with 60 and at one point went up to 180 paying members. They traveled as far away as the West Coast. They had their own bowling league, and always the monthly potlucks. And now, because I have to ask, how many of you are second or even third generation Silver Thread members? I know there are people out there whose, families, or fourth? Fourth? Wow. Wow. So, awareness of the needs of older adults, though, wasn't just social. I mean, Silver Threads was a very social thing, but there were other needs as well. Housing was on people's minds here in Oregon. The Genesis Housing Group was formed, and this is a picture from February of 1974. This is the second building that they were building across the street here. They eventually built 4 buildings, including one in Brooklyn. So we had 1974, we were seeing senior housing coming on. Meal program started. That's February of 1975. The meal program started in Village Hall. Oops, 74, you're right. Village Hall, they were serving meals at the community room. Food was prepared by Scollin and brought over from Stoughton and served to people over age 60. Another part of the Older Americans Act had to do with transportation, and this picture is a little bit later in time, but there were vans that actually Dane County was paying independent living to provide transportation for people. So that program started. And also by 1976, RSVP was up and running, and volunteers were helping get people to medical appointments. This was kind of a patchwork. So independent living was being paid by Dane County to provide rides in Oregon. The meal program was Dane County paying Scollin to bring food to Oregon. It was sort of a patchwork. And the village was benefiting from this, but it was a little bit unwieldy to make who was supposed to be overseeing this, who on the village staff was really responsible for this. So at a village board meeting in 1977, the village board decided to create a committee that they called the Commission on Aging Outreach Program. Isn't that catchy? Commission on Aging Outreach Program, and this committee was going to oversee the delivery of services to older adults. So on that committee, we had Rita Plummer, who was a village trustee at the time, and Florence Paulson from Silver Threads. We had Lois Wirtz, who was overseeing the nutrition program at that point in time for the village. Edna Kunai, who was one of the 2 RSVP driver coordinators, and then Ruth Swanson, who was on the board for Genesis Housing. So that group was meant to coordinate services for older adults that lived in the Oregon area. And it was important to get them in place because the county wanted to hire outreach workers. They wanted to hire people who would go out and meet with older adults. And they needed somebody to supervise that person, and that was that committee. They ended up hiring 2 outreach workers. The village hall's clerk staff provided some clerical support, and we get to the end of 1977, and we see by now we have the 2 organizations, other than the senior center, that have been around supporting older adults for all these years, because we have Silver Threads. But eventually, that village committee spun off and became what we now know as the Council on Aging. So the Oregon Area Council on Aging, which is its now own 501c3 nonprofit corporation, started as that village committee. They went off separately in 1984 and have been there ever since. So senior services were growing and the village hall wasn't. And they had more people coming into the village hall for the library, they had more people coming into the village hall for the senior center. They had more, but not more space. And they were trying to figure out what were they going to do about the demand for space when, in 1979, a possible solution arrived. Future home. So those of you who've been here forever, like me, remember grocery shopping in this building once upon a time, because this was Paul Coleman's grocery store, Paul's supermarket. And Paul decided at some point he was going to retire, and maybe a good place for this building to go would be for the village to have it, and they could use it for the stuff they said they didn't have enough room for, like library and senior services. So they decided about, what were they gonna do? Did the village want to buy this? I did find it amusing when I looked at this to look at the byline on the story. I'm like, oh, it's my name. Only it's not my name because it's my brother's name. But yeah, he was there covering that for the Observer in the late 70s. So there was the opportunity to buy this building, and when they bought this building, when the village decided to buy the building, which has about 7,700 usable square feet, that they could either pay for it $190,000, or Paul would spend some money remodeling it, and we could buy it for $225,000. So an extra $35,000 got you some remodel. But the village said, oh no, we do not need to pay them to remodel our building because there is grant money available for that, because that was part of the Older Americans Act. So the village went ahead, bought the building. 3,200 square feet became the senior center, that side of the building. This part of the building became the library. And that is what the floor plan of the senior center, well, of this building, actually looked like. So this is the door by the case manager's office, and there's the front door. This was library. Senior center went straight back. We did have pretty much what's the kitchen now, and we kind of had a room. Everything just sort of happened in a room. After that decision was made, they went ahead and hired their first senior center director, part-time. Her name was Nell Malley. Most of her salary came from Dane County. So even through the 80s, it was pretty obvious that that was not big enough to provide all the services that needed to happen. And 2 times during the 80s, there were chances for the senior center to get into a different building. Now, this is your next pick your brain. Can you remember? Can you think of anything that was proposed as possible? This could be the senior center buildings here in town. Anybody got any ideas? Well, the first one in 1983, the old Booth Funeral Home, just south of the Wisconsin Power and Light building, was available. The Power and Light company owned that, bought that building, and wanted to expand onto that property, and told the village, we'll give you a real good price on this building, but you gotta move it. And the village said, Well, the village, they actually thought about it. They studied it, and they said, no. Because they'd have to find land to move it onto, and they didn't have any. And the other building that now we don't really think about, but was really along, like, what's going to happen to that historic building, was the old red brick school. When they were trying to figure out what to do with that historic building, they want to tear it down. But the problem with that building, anybody got a guess?
Too many floors.
Too many stairs. You go in the building and you gotta go up and down stairs. It was just not gonna work because of that. So neither one of those happened. The 80s and 90s came and went. We had some changes in the financial structure of the center. The county got tired of worrying about paying the outreach worker in DeForest and the outreach worker in Oregon and the van company. And so they said, you know, we're done with that. Oregon, we're just gonna give you some money and you're gonna provide some services. DeForest, we're gonna give you some money, you're gonna provide some services. So the employees started to become village employees instead of county employees, and services became more village instead of county. The 80s, we started the adult day program. We started foot care for the first time, offering that here. We started something called service management, which now we refer to as case management. In the early 90s, the Wisconsin Association of Senior Centers created a process by which senior centers could be accredited. So that meant that the Wisconsin Association of Senior Centers would come out and study you with a microscope, a fine-tooth comb, look and see how stable are your finances. Do you have a confidentiality policy? Can everybody get around in your building like they should be able to? Do your toilets flush properly? Every time. But anyway, the senior center staff here decided they wanted to become accredited. It meant that you met the highest standards possible for senior centers. It helps you get grant funding, among other things, but it's a real demonstration of your quality. So they went through that process, and in 1994, the Oregon Area Senior Center became just the 6th senior center in the state to be accredited. We have maintained that status ever since. It's a process we go through every 5 years. And there's only about 25% of the senior centers in the state that are accredited. So it's kind of a nice designation to have, and I think our next picture shows us, oh no, it shows how we looked in 1980. I'm behind here. So yeah, that was when we got in the building, that was our lovely front entrance. Charming, isn't it? But here we are being accredited, and we see the accreditation committee. We've got Nell Malley, the director, on the far side, and then Shirley White, Carol Farrell, Dorothy Tashin, and Margaret Layler. All right, for those of you who've been here forever, is it Layler or Laller?
Louder.
Lawler? Yet a third option appears, Lawler. Lawler, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So we got accredited, yay. But space pressure was improving because library built a building next door, and senior center then could have all of this building. 1996, 1997, they remodeled this building. It cost $328,000. The senior center staff had to move out of the building while it was being remodeled. All the services had to leave the building while it was being remodeled. This sounds awful to me, but to them it may not have been so awful because they were so short on space that they were already doing a whole bunch of stuff in other places anyway. So if you look back at senior center newsletters and stuff from that period of time, you find out that things were going on at the fire station, at the village hall in several places, at the Genesis building community rooms, local churches, and Brooklyn Village Hall, and occasionally in people's private homes, which I think would be a liability today issue, but that's what they were doing. So we're seeing the ribbon cutting. They went from celebrating their accreditation to cutting the ribbon for the new building, the grand opening or reopening of the center in February of 1997. So your next question, how many years ago is that? Too many. Okay, yes, I agree with that one. We've been here for too many years. So after this building the big building got resettled, Nell Malley decided it was time for her to retire, and she left, and in the late summer of 1997, the next director, who had been the McFarland Senior Center director, Allison Kelch, was hired and came, and this is how we looked in the summer of 1999. So the center continued to change with the needs of people over time. We had services that were needed at the time that now sound kind of like what to us. Like for a while in the 90s, there was a Sunday home delivered meal service. That's not something we've done for a very long time. For a long time, there was regular hours here in the building for the, remember this, over 55 employment agency. Remember seeing ads or hearing about the over 55 employment? Yep, they had office hours here. But our core services have been really stable. We've had meals, we've had transportation, case management, the adult day program, various health services, medical equipment, loan closet, social programs, educational programs, entertainment, exercise classes. That's all been pretty steady. And the only thing that really has thrown a monkey wrench in that was COVID. But we are proud of ourselves that we didn't miss a day of meals when that all happened. So this is a summary, which I don't expect you to be able to read at the moment, and we won't spend much time on, but this is a one-page summary of what the senior center offers. This is what we hand out to like the staff at the local clinic so that they know what people can access here. It's a pretty wide range of services for people. So for the past several decades, it's been increasingly obvious that this building is too small. It's also getting to be in less good repair, reaching a point where we can't necessarily fix the things that are wrong with this building. And so it is time, it has been time now, for the village to think about what comes next in terms of a building for the senior center. So in 2022, the village really started that process seriously and hired a firm to start exploring what a future senior center should look like, should have for space and for rooms and all that kind of stuff. And so they studied us, they did sessions with the public to come ask people what they wanted in a new senior center and to come up with sort of an idea of what the future might hold for the senior center. And some of you participated in some of those opportunities. And what the result was that in order for us to have the space that we need now and moving forward, we need a building that's about 4 times as big as this one. That's not really surprising to me, but it's a lot, it seems like it will be a lot bigger, 4 times as big. They also recommended that we keep that building on 1 floor because we don't want to be dealing with elevators, and I agree with that. So they hired an owner's representative in 2024, a fellow by the name of Jeff Vine, who acts on the village's behalf to try and make this construction project be run as smoothly as possible for the village. If none of us on village staff are experts in building big projects. That's not what we do for a living. But we need somebody who knows and who has the village's interests at heart. So they hired somebody to help kind of shepherd this project along, and they hired a firm called OPN Architects to design the new senior center. And that was really interesting to me. When we asked for architects to submit proposals, we had several architectural firms who submitted proposals. This firm went out and found the leading senior center architect in the country, a fellow who lives in Ohio, Southern Ohio. He's designed senior centers in 32 different states, and that's his specialty. And when they proposed building, or designing this senior center, they said, we want to use this guy, we're going to use this guy as our consultant because we recognize that a senior center has needs as a building to support the people who are going to use it that this guy really gets. You know, you can't build a senior center like you build a school, or like you build a factory, or like you build a nursing home. They're very different kinds of buildings. And I think that was a great choice on the part of the architects, and I think it helped them get the job because they realized if you're going to put the money into building a new building, you want to build it to best serve the population that it's being built for. So they hired OPN architects, and there's been a long process of new building plans, designs, ever since. Let me see if I've got everything here. There were a couple of things that we wanted right from the beginning. One of them is that we want to stay in this building while a new building is being built. There really isn't a place in this community for us to pick up and move and offer services out of for the amount of time that it would take for a new building to be built. So part of the goal was we stay here until we can move into the new one. Another consideration was we've had exercise classes grow and grow and grow and grow. We can see that's really an important part of what the senior center offers, and so we wanted to make sure that we could offer appropriate exercise space in the new building and design it in a way that the community as a whole could reap the benefits from that as well. So we're going to look at what is the floor plan of the new building, and the words on here are too small for you guys to be able to read, but to orient you, this more or less, in this part of this parking lot, which you can't quite see all of, this is where the current building is. We're over here. So the swimming pool is up there. The old post office building was kind of here. This is old library parking lot. This is old library building spot. So this building is a little bit of an L shape. A gymnasium is here. And when I say a gymnasium, I don't mean something that's got a treadmill and ellipticals in it. I mean something that's got a basketball court and pickleball courts. And around the edge of that gymnasium is a walking track. There is a net, a stiff netting that goes from floor to ceiling so that if somebody's playing basketball and the ball doesn't stay on the court, it hits the net, it doesn't hit the walker, the person who's walking around the outside. So this more or less is the main entrance of this building. There's a gift shop inside, there's a reception area, there's offices, there's right across the way a dining room, a kitchen, adult day program spaces, a classroom, a game lounge, a couple of pool tables, some card spaces. There's a patio, a fitness studio. This is the main hall, so sort of the equivalent of what you're sitting in right now, only bigger. There are restrooms in a couple of places. There's a place here that closes off and a place here that closes off. After hours, people can come in this building and go into the gym or use the restrooms, but can't necessarily get all through the building. There's a classroom here that has a demonstration kitchen so that if somebody wants to come in and show you how to use the Instant Pot, what can you do with your air fryer that you never thought of before? How do you cook if you are no longer able to tolerate gluten? I mean, all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of features to this building. One of the features that I don't think people realize until it's pointed out, well, why would you? But this will actually be able to serve as an emergency evacuation site in an emergency because it has a generator, It has a commercial kitchen where food can be produced. It has accessible restrooms. It actually has a shower in one of the adult day program restrooms. It has enough space in that gymnasium to set up cots for people if they needed to. So if heaven forbid we had an emergency in the community and needed to have an evacuation site, presuming that the building itself is not impacted by the emergency, we do have a spot. That's the first emergency shelter we've really had in the community. So that's a nice feature. There'll be more steps. We have gotten construction drawings finished for this. The building has been out for bids. The bids came back last week. I'm happy to say that the bids came in at a range that was within the budget that we expected. So that means we probably don't have to go back and figure out where to cut things out of this building, which is a huge relief because we've not overbuilt this building. The dining room, while somewhat bigger than our current dining room, isn't huge. Is it going to be big enough in 50 years, 40 years? No, it's not. I can tell you that right now. But we can't afford to just build all the land that we have. Instead, we have to be smart, and we have to say, if it's not big enough for everybody who wants to come for lunch, then we have 2 seatings of lunch. We have the early lunch and we have the slightly later lunch. We're not going to put everybody in at one spot. We have 3 case managers' office there. Is that going to be enough? No, it's not. Someday we're not going to have enough case managers' offices. But at that point, will those case managers be spending half a day in a senior housing apartment complex? Will they be hanging out at the food pantry for a while? You know, will they be able to work from home part of the time? The reality is you can't just keep taking up more real estate. So we got to program smarter. But I think that within the next month or so, we will have a builder hired. The village will have a builder hired. I think that later this spring, there'll be a groundbreaking and there'll be a chunk of asphalt that's dug up ceremonially. But then there'll be progress being made this spring. So I have some additional pictures of what we think this building is going to look like. It's not the easiest to try and orient yourselves to where you're looking at it from. And the first picture is really boring. Just warning you. Really boring. This is a boring picture of the gymnasium. You're standing at the northwest, so that direction. You're over there, and you're looking at this side of the building. But the next picture you see the front entrance. So there, so the gym would be going off that way. And this is offices. So that's your main front entrance, and you'll see that there's a cover here where cars can drive up and the passengers can get out under cover so that they're out of the weather. There, the front entrance would be up here. Here's this cover. You're coming down to the south end of the building, which would be over here, which has a bigger cover, and we'll see that better in a moment. Places for you to hook up your bicycles when you come. So here's that south side, the covered entrance. The fully covered entrance has 3 access points to the building. The first one is for people picking up home delivered meals. When our drivers come to get home delivered meals to take them out, we have 3 routes currently. We've had as many as 4 at times. They deserve to be protected from the rain and the snow while they're loading their cars up with all those heavy bags of meals. Almost every year somebody falls in our alley. I lose sleep because I don't want people breaking bones and being hurt because of trying to do the good deed of delivering meals. So they've got a covered entrance now. The people arriving or being picked up for the adult day program also have a separate covered entrance. And on the far side, there's a door for our medical equipment loan closet. So if you're coming to get a wheelchair or you're returning a wheelchair, you can get out of your car, get it out of your trunk, not stand there in the pouring rain or in the nasty weather, and take care of that. So that's kind of the south side of the building. Now, before we were looking at the boring picture was kind of up here at this side. Now we've walked down a little ways and we can see the patio for the building is here. There's some green space because that's really stormwater, a place for the stormwater to soak in. The piece behind the gym that's shorter but has those 3 windows, that's the exercise studio. So there's both a gymnasium and an exercise studio. Nobody wants to do yoga in the great big gym while people are walking around looking at them. Well, maybe somebody does, but I haven't met them yet. That would be straight north. So if you're standing by the pool, you're seeing the gym and the studio. And now we're going in the building. So you got the front doors. The main entrance is over here. This is a receptionist. This is the gift shop. And there's a place to sit and have a cup of coffee if you want to. This is the gated off area that'd be open during the day so you can go down to the gym, closed at night. This is an area I call the grab and go. Grab and go is, most of you probably have been here when we've had garden produce available, or we've had Hy-Vee has dropped things off that they want people to take home and eat. So there's a space there where people can come in and see whether there's stuff that they want to grab. There'll also be coffee. This is kind of the coffee station as well. So if you want to grab a cup of coffee, take it in by the gift shop, or you're going to see on the other side of this hall in a few minutes the other spaces that are available. So what you have to do now is look at the people. Remember where the people are, because they're going to show up again from different perspectives. So there's a pink arm here. There's a young man who's obviously lost here. We have these 2 people on the other side of the gift shop. Now, I think Mr. Pink Arm here is going to show up in the next picture. So we're going to come through that front door, and now we're going to look and see Mr. Pink Arm is looking into the dining room. So that view gives you an idea of what the dining room will look like as you come in the main entry. You'll see that space. If you go in the dining room, it looks like that. This building has a commercial kitchen. It will be utilized not only by us, but also groups, hopefully, like the food pantry, who doesn't have access to a commercial kitchen right now, so they can't break down large volumes of food into smaller packages for their clients. So hopefully they'll be able to do that in the future. But we heard from the community that they want a nature-inspired space for this building. They wanted light and bright and nature-inspired. So you can see there's those are actually sound panels over on the side that are wrapped in murals that look like birch trees. It's meant to keep the echoing of the clattery dishes and things down a little bit because it's a harder surface floor and you can get noise bouncing. So those are there. And I don't know, I guess these are supposed to look like clouds, but those are also sound absorbing light fixtures. So that's what the dining room looks like. We're back to, here's the guy who was lost. Still there, hasn't found his way out of the building yet. The people who were there, like pointing at the guy, like, what's he doing here? They're still there. That's the gift shop little area. This is the grab and go spot that we were talking about before. There's the game lounge. So just on the other side of the dining room, there's a space that'll have tables and chairs set up. People can play games there. They can play euchre there. They can go in and play pool. But you could also, if it's not otherwise engaged, have a friend join you for a cup of coffee just at that space. There is some seating space here. Great place for the people whose turn who are waiting their turn to make their pool shot. This will be probably where books and puzzles that we always have available for loan will be located. So no more having to share the dining room with people wanting to play cards. The big green things on the side are just more sound panels. And then there's the classroom. Classroom can be used for all kinds of things, but it just gives you an idea of the view out towards the patio and the retaining pond. I don't have images for you of the gym or the studio in this set of pictures. I think that is the last one. I do want to say thank you to the archivists, the people who saved all those newspaper clippings many, many years ago and put them into albums for you guys. I don't know if all of you realize that just this close to you are books full of Silver Threads history, clippings, just endless clippings. And I used them in making the first part of this presentation. And I don't know who all was responsible for saving those, but I do know that Joni Byrne was a huge factor in keeping that history. I would also say thank you to Joan Wethel and Faylu McElroy for their efforts as well. Those were the three archivists that I knew. So I don't know, I think I've taken up pretty much all of your time, but if you've got a couple of questions, I'll answer them.
A laundry facility, I didn't see.
There's a laundry, let's do this. So in the, there's the dining room, the kitchen, there is a laundry facility right here. So it's reasonably close to the adult day program space.
It's like this one here.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be bigger than that. No more stack washer and dryer. Anybody else? Yeah.
Where's the movie theater?
The movie theater. So this main hall up here, one of the reasons this is designed the way it is, it has no windows because it's then a safe tornado shelter. And it's big enough. Boy, the last time we had a tornado and everybody was shoved in what was Ann and Jill's office. This will be a bigger space, but it has a screen on each end. It can also be divided into two separate spaces. And, there's this funny little line right here that is actually the equivalent, what I call the equivalent of a Murphy bed stage. It doesn't just go whomp though, it goes like this. So there's a stage so that performers will be able to be elevated a little bit. We also have a space for the piano, big enough to put that piano on a piano, what's called a piano truck, and pull it out of the way. So if other people are using the room, if that room gets rented out because it's kind of part of the gym as well, it can be out of the way. And for the first time, there's a little space for performers. So you know when you guys have somebody come in and perform, and now it's like, where do they leave their coat? Where am I supposed to put my guitar case? Where does the ukulele group put all their ukulele cases? I once almost took a terrible header in the copy room because I was looking at what I was going in there with and didn't realize that all over the floor were music cases or instrument cases. So there'll be an actual space for that. So we're looking forward to the new space. It felt like a lot when they told us it could be 4 times as big as what we have now, but by the time we put everything in there, it's like, oh, well, couldn't put that in, didn't get that in, but it'll seem like pure luxury after this. Yeah.
For the Silver Threads, like the storage room
Mhm.
that's now in that pool area,
Mhm.
there'll be some room set aside for that?
So there are several, there's never enough storage in a building, but there's a storage area right here. There's a storage area behind reception. There's a storage area here. We do have built into different spaces, so I suspect there'll be a cubby that becomes,
Dedicated.
place. Yeah, Karen.
Do they have any time frame from starting to when they think it'll be complete?
Yep, so if they start this spring, it would probably be done in the summer, late summer of '27. So if they start in the spring of '26, the hope is that it's done before the weather gets too cool in '27.
Okay, here comes the elephant in the room, financing. How
Mhm.
much is this project going to cost, or is it already financed?
The village has built this into their borrowing plan. They've been looking at it for the last 5 years. So it's all slotted in. One of the goals for the village has been to not have people's taxes spike up as a result of this project. So it's been timed in a way that as some financing or some loan debt goes off, this debt slides in. I mean, yes, it'll impact people's taxes, there's no question, any public building will. But they've been watching that and trying to time it, so it's not terrible. I'm gonna get you, Alan.
Well, if somebody
No,
else.
go ahead, Alan.
The basketball court, that they were talking about, and you
Yep.
can go in from the door and they rent it out, is that gonna come to the senior center or the city?
You know, those are all decisions that'll have to be made at some future point. I imagine that if they're earning income after hours, that they'll be paying an employee, might be a college kid or something, to be there after hours, and it'll probably just support the, being able to have the building open if there's fees associated. I would imagine it'll just kind of be a circular.
I just thought there'd be a lot of receptions and wedding things and stuff there, it'd be really nice.
I don't know that that'll happen.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought it was for, after it was closed, after the place was closed.
No, I think that people will be in there playing basketball and
Oh,
walking
nice.
and having free gym and, all that kind of stuff.
That'd be great for everybody in the city.
Yeah, walking used to seem like kind of like we need it in the wintertime and otherwise it's kind of a luxury, and now we've reached a point where heat, we have many more days of extreme heat. We have smoke where we're not supposed to be outside because of wildfire smoke, air quality issues. We have higher levels of allergens in the air. And so really walking indoors in a regulated environment has become more important to have access to, not just in the winter as well. So yes.
So does this remain a 55 and over building then, or are we gonna have rugrats running all over the place?
That's a great question. So this is a senior center. This is a senior center. It's being built as a senior center. This part of the building may be made available, particularly after hours or on weekends, for the community to use. So that gymnasium, I think the goal of that gymnasium has always been that the community could benefit from it. But our firm stance, and I've not heard any pushback, is that during the day, during the week, it is part of the senior center and it is available for the senior center's programming. So, yeah. Anybody else?
I had one more little question, I'm sorry, I'm a big question asker.
That's all right.
You were saying that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think, like the people that come in and do you said the basketball court, and you said there was gonna be a exercise room. Is it gonna have some little things in it for us to exercise with?
So the fitness studio is sort of a typical studio space. There's mirrors and a long horizontal bar attached to the wall. For different classes, there's different kinds of equipment, but nowhere in this building do I see like exercycles or
I see.
treadmills. There is, in the space right here, this is a kind of wider hallway. That's what we call the balance hallway, and there are some features in that hallway that are meant to help people maintain their balance, so you can come in and do them yourself. If you've ever been to physical therapy and had to walk on the balance bar or the parallel bars where you've got a bar on each side of you and they're having you walk along, there'll be a set of those there, and you can practice your heel to toe walking, which is good for your balance. There's there's a stair walk, a couple of steps up that are stair height, and then a few steps down that are curb height. So you can practice walking the steps and holding on to that. or stepping down off a curb. Sometimes it's great to be able to practice that while you have something to grab onto. So we're trying to build in some features that people can just come use anytime they're in the building. Also, if you're taking a balance class in the studio, the instructor might have you come out and do those things, use those pieces of equipment out in the hallway. So we're trying to build that fitness in. But no, the problem with equipment is that it has to be maintained, and somebody has to be studying that equipment all the time to make sure that all the bolts are tight, and it's also an insurance. It's a real insurance question. So, and there are thankfully other places in town where people can access some of that stuff. So, thank you. You've had a look at the past, a gallop through the present, and then a look at what tomorrow hopefully has in store. So, thank you.
Thank you.